setting out to create an airline that people love. I didn't plan it that way, but that's what hatched in my head. I abandoned that thought because I didn't think it was sustainable. And about a year later, my team found it in a wastebasket and said, no, that is why we came here.
When I came on board, we had very little going for us. We had no money, we had no investors, we had no airplanes, we had no people, but we had an idea.
There was a tremendous sense of purpose, a quest. It was a sense of dread and wonder and excitement.
We were working in the office in Soho, and it was just this one big loft space.
I mean, the place was funky. It had bare light bulbs hanging down, it had no hot water.
Rickety hardwood floors, a bunch of desks in an open area.
In the end, I guess there was probably 20 of us crammed in there, so it was always very noisy because there'd always be a couple of meetings going on, and there would be someone on a telephone call. And
it was a dreadful building, but it was so downtown New York.
We had a lot of fun. You worked long hours because no one had their spouse or partner, and so people stayed very late.
It was kind of working hard with a purpose, but not sure what general direction you were going in, other than we're going to create this airline.
You got involved in a lot of things that you normally wouldn't, because we just, in many cases, we didn't have anyone else to do it. So you were the, jack of all trades.
No matter how difficult things got or how stressful they got, there always seemed to be this end goal in sight.
When we started going to raise money from U.S. investors, that took a lot longer than anticipated. We had hoped to do it in 6 months, and it took 16.
We thought we would be able to put an airline together quickly, but we were kind of naive with that thinking. But we were very ambitious and very aggressive.
And ultimately, we found really committed investors that fell in love with two ideas: a brand and an airline. So we filed for certification.
Fred said, "Hey Dave, you used to practice law, right? Why don't you head up our certification efforts in DC, because we'd literally run into a brick wall there."
We started to get rumors that we were in trouble. 2 days after Christmas, the Department of Transportation denied the application.
That was really hard. The uncertainty was very hard.
People who had just joined the company were kind of even more concerned and more disheartened, I think, than people who had been with the company for a long time, because they didn't know what to expect and they hadn't kind of lived really through some of that adversity before.
We didn't know if or when it would happen, but I think everyone sort of had that faith and recognized that the potential success was enough to justify people taking huge risks and moving their families and not knowing what would happen and not knowing where they'd be living and, all of these things.
I mean, there were days, time and again, that I was sure we weren't going to make it, but I couldn't believe it. I never once believed for a second that we could fail, even though rationally the obstacles in front of us were overwhelming.
We figured out at one point in time that we had 75% of the airline industry against us. They didn't want another competitor.
We had almost 200 people hired. We had 10 planes. We had a couple of $100 million in this thing. And I was upstairs in this building and called everybody on deck and said, "We're going to fight." Would anybody here like to launch an airline?
We use the challenge as a rallying cry and a rallying point. So like any tough experience, it allowed us to gel as a team and realize that obviously what we were trying to do was special and posed a real threat to the airline industry. Otherwise, why would they be so hell-bent on trying to kill us?
A group of us had been talking about, what are we going to do? We've got to get the message out.
We developed a campaign called Let VA Fly, built a website.
My best recollection of Let VA Fly was Valentine's Day, where all of the employees of Virgin America took to the streets of San Francisco to try to get people to focus on our campaign and go to our website.
And my gosh, we talked to thousands of people that day and had a lot of fun.
For me personally, just because of my sort of 24/7 involvement in the certification, the best moment was when we got the piece of paper that said we were going to be an airline. That was just a great day. I had a bottle of champagne up in the fridge ready to go, and we let it go.
August 8th, the first day we ever flew an airplane. That was a high. To watch this whole thing that had been a paper project for so long actually take off.
Today's surreal. I didn't sleep last night. Sat out on the balcony at 4 a.m. looking at the lights. I couldn't sleep. This is phenomenal.
There are tens of thousands of things that go into the dispatch of one plane on one day. And it was all coming to the head, except knowing us, it wasn't good enough to have one plane. We had to have two.
Okay, parking brake is set. You're clear to disconnect.
We had an airplane come out of New York and then one come out of Los Angeles, and then we had arranged with air traffic control to bring them in on the parallel runways here in San Francisco, so they landed at the same time.
I hosted the inaugural flight from Los Angeles to San Francisco. For me, in the inaugural flight was the culmination of a lot of good memories and a lot of high moments.
We're a group of pilots here getting ready to launch the inaugural flight out of LA up to San Francisco.
It's going to be a beautiful flight. We're thrilled to be here.
So I woke up at 4 o'clock that morning in New York, and it was raining so hard it was raining top to bottom and sideways at the same time.
Fred, our CEO, almost missed the flight.
But I got there. I think we had a 15 or 20-minute delay. We took off with about 100 really happy, really exhausted people on board and had a ball.
It's like a cocktail party on board. Everybody was so excited. It was very special.
I'm not sure that I've ever experienced anything quite like this.
This is a historic event, and we are honored to be a part of it. We're honored to have you with us.
Frankly, I think we were all disappointed our flight was so short. Then the captain made an announcement that the flight from New York was beside us.
If you look out to your right, you'll be able to see a red tail sparkling beautifully in the sky.
And then we landed simultaneously, and there was just this incredible beauty about it. It was almost like being in a dream. It was just the consummation of all of this effort and all of this struggle and uncertainty, and finally having it come to fruition.
So then we pulled up to the gate at the same time. And I knew it was going to be kind of raucous, but I was not prepared.
I was one of the last people to get off into the international terminal, and the place was just packed with people. Fred, Richard, Mayor, Gavin Newsom were there. And walking out is a moment that I don't think I'll ever forget.
It was mind-boggling. I was afraid I was going to burst into tears.
We welcome you to a new start.
It was such a special moment for me, and I saw the pride and what we had all been dreaming about and working so hard and the long hours. It was an incredible moment for me.
Then we went to a big raucous party in downtown San Francisco, and I probably stayed up later than I have in 10 or 20 years.
I can't believe that we actually have planes in the sky now. I can't tell you how many times we'd be in our office and we would point to the sky saying, you know what, one day we're going to see Virgin America planes landing. You know, one day.
building Virgin America consumed you. When I look back and I think of the sacrifices that people made in terms of their families and friends and putting their life on hold in order to do this, it's really incredible that we found a group of people that were prepared to do that.
I've never worked so hard in my life, but I've never learned so much in my life. You know, it was probably the biggest challenge. It stretched me the most.
I view this opportunity as a historic opportunity to really change the airline industry. You know, it's one of those moments where you say, you know, where were you when we changed the airline industry? And I'm going to be proud to say that I was part of Virgin America, part of the team that made it happen.
My high point hasn't been reached yet. That will be cash flow break even. That's something that I personally look forward to.
It has been a wild, wild ride. And it's still a wild ride. And I hope it never changes.